Chapter 1. One night, one mistake, two lines on a report. Aurelian Vale was having an excellent night, and that alone should have been suspicious. At 28, he was the youngest CEO to ever take Vale Lux Corporation International. Luxury investments, rare gems, high-end fashion tech, limited edition collectibles. If it was expensive, shiny, and impossible to obtain, Vale Lux owned a piece of it. The media called him brilliant. His competitors called him insufferable. His employees called him terrifying but fair. Aurelian himself preferred rich and tired. Tonight, however, he was rich, tired, and drunk enough to be happy. The bar was exclusive, loud, and crawling with people who pretended they didn't recognize him while very obviously recognizing him. Crystal lights shimmered above, glasses clinked, bass thundered through the floor, and Aurelian, suit jacket abandoned somewhere he'd never see again, was dancing. Actually dancing. Mira Vale, his assistant and distant cousin, and the only reason he hadn't burned his company down out of spite, stared at him from the VIP booth like she was witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime disaster. Is he dancing? She asked the bartender faintly. Yes, the bartender replied, and I think he's smiling. Mira crossed herself. Dear God. Aurelian lifted his glass. To billion-dollar deals, he shouted, voice sharp and bright, and to crushing our enemies so thoroughly they cry in private. Several executives cheered. Someone handed him another drink. Someone else laughed too close to his ear. The night blurred after that. Music, lights, laughter, heat. Aurelian danced like someone who had finally let go of control, sharp edges softened by alcohol and adrenaline. He flirted recklessly. He drank irresponsibly. And then there was a stranger. Tall, broad shoulders, dark eyes that lingered a little too long, a presence that grounded him even as the world spun. They talked, or maybe they didn't. Aurelian couldn't remember the words, only the tension, the electricity, the way he felt seen and challenged in the same breath. One reckless night, one stranger, one massive mistake. Aurelian woke up the next morning with a pounding headache, dry mouth, and a creeping sense of dread. He stared at the unfamiliar ceiling. Nope. He sat up too fast, groaned, and glanced sideways. There was someone in the bed, breathing, alive, definitely not alone. Aurelian panicked. Oh no, no, absolutely not. He grabbed his phone, wallet, clothes, dignity, what remained of it, and bolted out of the room like the building was on fire. He did not look back. He did not check the stranger's face. It was, in retrospect, the worst decision of his life. 2 months later, Aurelian Vale sat in a pristine private hospital room, legs crossed, arms folded, expression icy. The doctor smiled professionally. Congratulations, Mr. Val, you're 2 months pregnant. Silence. Aurelian blinked once. Then again. I want a refund on life. Mira, seated beside him, choked. I told you to drink water that night. That is not relevant, Aurelian snapped, then turned slowly back to the doctor. Say it again. You're pregnant, the doctor repeated calmly. Male pregnancy is perfectly normal in your world, of course. Your health indicators are excellent. Aurelian stared at the ultrasound like it had personally betrayed him. Pregnant. From a one-night stand. With a man whose face he couldn't remember. Fantastic. For 3 days, he spiraled. For 5, he argued with himself. For 7, he stood in the shower at midnight, hand pressed to his abdomen, jaw tight, heart conflicted. Abortion was an option, a logical one. Clean, controlled. But every time he thought of it, something twisted painfully in his chest. Damn it, he muttered. The baby stayed. The stalking started a week later. It began innocently enough. Flowers appeared on his office desk. Rare, imported, breathtakingly expensive. No note. The next day, a neatly packed lunch arrived at noon. Homemade, still warm. Mira eyed it suspiciously. You didn't order this. I don't eat carbs from unknown sources, Aurelian said, pushing it away. The following week brought gifts. Watches worth more than some people's houses. Limited edition cufflinks. A rare gemstone he'd once mentioned wanting in an interview 3 years ago. Then came the letters. Elegant handwriting. No name? You look tired today. Please rest. Did you eat? I like it when you wear dark colors. Aurelian felt at first as irritation, then unease, then fear. I swear, he snapped one morning, holding up yet another velvet box. If this is another diamond watch, I'm suing someone. Mira frowned. Sir, this is not romantic. I know, Aurelian said tightly. That's the problem. He started noticing things. A car parked across the street too often. Footsteps echoing behind him that stopped when he turned. The feeling of being watched, constantly. Vale Lux's security was top tier, yet somehow, the stalker slipped through like smoke. Weeks passed. Sleep became difficult. His temper sharpened. By the time he decided to confront the stalker, Aurelian was exhausted, pregnant, and deeply annoyed, which was a dangerous combination. I'll catch them, he announced, grabbing his coat. Mira shot up. Absolutely not. I'm a grown man and a CEO. You're pregnant and stubborn. I am always stubborn. Against all logic and common sense, Aurelian slipped out that evening alone. And for the first time, the stalker noticed him noticing them. Aurelian felt it instantly. The shift in the air, the sudden pressure, fear punched through him. He ran. Heart pounding, breath sharp, panic screaming in his ears. He turned a corner, barely thinking, and yanked open the door of the nearest car. And froze. The interior was dark, luxurious, leather seats. The man behind the wheel turned slowly. Cold, sharp eyes met his. Recognition hit like a gunshot. Aurelian's blood ran cold. Because the stranger whose car he'd just broken into was Lucian Blackwood. His rival. The most dangerous billionaire CEO in the country. And a man the entire world knew was already crazy about him. And now Aurelian Vale had just made the worst mistake of his life. Chapter 2. I hid in a stranger's car. Worst decision of my life. Lucian Blackwood had been in a perfectly foul mood, which for him meant calm, lethal, and quietly considering the downfall of 3 separate corporations. He sat in the back seat of his car, jacket immaculate, expression cold, reviewing reports on his tablet while his driver waited outside an upscale restaurant. Another negotiation had ended with Vale Lux snatching a contract from under his nose. Again, Aurelian Vale, Lucien's rival, Lucien's obsession, Lucien's lifelong, professionally inconvenient weakness. The media called it a one-sided fixation. The board called it unprofessional. Lucian called it patience. He'd loved Aurelian for years, since the first shareholders' meeting where the sharp-tongued menace had smiled sweetly while tearing Lucien's proposal apart line by line. Since the day Aurelian looked at him like Lucian was both a challenge and an annoyance. Lucien had been doomed ever since. Tonight, he was thinking, again, about how Aurelian hadn't slept well lately. The dark circles, the weight loss, the way he snapped faster than usual during their last meeting. Lucien knew everything about him. Everything except what was making him look over his shoulder lately. That was when the car door flew open. A body practically fell inside. Lucien didn't look up at first. Get out of my car. His voice was cold, clipped, meant for an over-eager paparazzo or an overconfident thief. The silence stretched. Something felt off. Lucien finally raised his eyes, and the world stopped. Aurelian Vale sat frozen in the passenger seat, hair disheveled, coat half on, breathing hard like he'd just outrun death itself. His eyes were wide, sharp with panic, lips parted like he'd forgotten how to speak. Lucien's mind blanked, then burned. Slowly, dangerously, Lucien smiled. Eh, so this is how you choose to get close to me now? Aurelian swore. Of all cars, of all the streets, of all the cities. I am not here by choice, Aurelian snapped, trying and failing to open the door. It didn't budge. Lucien gestured calmly. The driver locked the doors. Aurelian turned on him, furious. Open it. No. Lucien leaned back, studying him like a rare, wounded animal. You're shaking. Mind your business. Hard to, Lucien replied mildly. When you break into my car looking like you've seen a ghost. Aurelian clenched his jaw. I said open the door. Lucien didn't move. Tell me why you're running. Silence. Lucien's gaze sharpened. You don't get to leave like this, not tonight? Aurelian laughed bitterly. You think this is some game? No, Lucien said softly. I think you're terrified. That did it, Aurelian snapped. Fine, you want to know? He hissed. I'm pregnant. Lucien froze. Aurelian didn't stop. I don't know who the father is. I didn't plan this. And for weeks, someone's been following me, watching me, leaving gifts, food, letters, like I'm some goddamn exhibit. Lucien's expression darkened. They know where I work, where I live. They know what I like. And tonight, I tried to catch them like an idiot, and they noticed. His voice cracked, just slightly. I ran, and I ended up here. The car was dead silent. Lucien stared at him. Pregnant. Fear bloomed in Lucien's chest. Hot, violent, uncontrollable. You know what, for some time I really thought that you were my stalker. Aurelian said, voice faint. Slowly, carefully, he removed his gloves. You thought, Lucien said quietly, that I was your stalker. Aurelian scoffed. I did, briefly. Then I realized that would be stupid. Lucien raised a brow. Why would you stalk me? Aurelian continued flatly, when the whole world, including me, knows you're shamelessly in love with me. Lucien blinked, then laughed. A soft, breathless sound, like disbelief. You really do think the worst of me. Lucien leaned forward, voice dropping into something dangerous. If I wanted you, Aurelian, you would know. I don't hide my intentions. Aurelian scowled. That's somehow worse. Lucien's humor faded instantly when his gaze dropped, lingering, protective, furious. You're not going home. I absolutely am. Lucien shook his head. No. Lucien, you're under my protection now. I didn't agree. You don't need to. The car started moving. Aurelian stared at him, outraged. You can't just kidnap rival CEOs. Lucien replied calmly. Watch me. They arrived at Blackwood Manor before Aurelian could form a coherent threat. Security swarmed. Doctors were called. Orders were barked. Aurelian was escorted inside like a priceless artifact. This is insane, he muttered. Lucien followed him, coat draped over Aurelian's shoulders without asking. You're safe here. Aurelian scoffed. You're enjoying this. Lucien didn't deny it. I've wanted you under my roof for years, he said honestly. I just didn't think fear would be the reason. Aurelian hesitated. For the first time since the stalking began, he didn't feel watched. And that terrified him almost as much as it comforted him. Because Lucien Blackwood didn't let go of what he claimed. And Aurelian Vale had just fallen straight into his hands. Chapter 3. Living with a lovesick psycho, and somehow falling for him. Lucien Blackwood did not do things halfway. The morning after Aurelian arrived at Blackwood Manor, the estate transformed into what could only be described as a high-security maternity bunker. Security doubled overnight, then tripled. Then, Lucien decided that double hadn't been enough in the first place. Armed guards rotated shifts like clockwork. Surveillance drones quietly hummed along the perimeter. Every corridor had discreet cameras. Aurelian noticed this while attempting to sneak out for coffee. Why does your hallway look like a military base? He demanded. Lucien, sipping his tea calmly, replied, Because you're pregnant. I was pregnant yesterday too. Yes, Lucien agreed, unbothered. And you were being stalked. Aurelian opened his mouth, then shut it again. Annoyingly, that logic checked out. Doctors followed. Plural. A team of specialists arrived, nutritionists, obstetric experts, stress management consultants. They reviewed his diet, his sleep, his hormone levels. Lucien listened to every word like scripture. Aurelian glared from the couch. If one more person asks me how I'm feeling emotionally, I'm committing arson. Lucy, or Yen, nodded. I'll cancel the therapist. I didn't say, I'll keep the anger management one, Lucian added thoughtfully. Food became a battlefield. Every meal was custom-made, nutritionally perfect, tailored to pregnancy needs and Aurelian's personal preferences. Aurelian stared at the breakfast spread. This is excessive. Lucien leaned over his shoulder. You didn't eat enough protein yesterday. You tracked my protein intake? Lucien blinked. Of course. Aurelian pinched the bridge of his nose. You're acting like the baby is yours. Lucien replied calmly, without missing a beat. I wish. That was how it went. They argued constantly, Aurelian complained. Lucien listened, then did whatever he wanted anyway. Lucien doted shamelessly, coats draped over shoulders, chairs pulled out, meetings shortened the moment Aurelian looked eyed. He touched lightly, carefully, like Aurelian might vanish if handled wrong. Aurelian, for his part, pretended not to melt. He absolutely did not enjoy being fussed over. He definitely did not like how safe he felt. And he certainly did not smile when Lucien remembered exactly how he took his tea. Mira noticed immediately. She cornered Aurelian in the study one afternoon. You're glowing. I'm irritated, Aurelian snapped. You're glowing irritably. Meanwhile, Elliot Graves, the long-suffering assistant of Lucien Blackwood, watched the entire thing unfold with the quiet horror of a man witnessing history repeat itself. Sir, Elliot said carefully one morning, you've rescheduled 3 board meetings because Mr. Vale sneezed. Lucien didn't look up. He's congested. Yes, but and pregnant. Elliot sighed. Of course he is. Work didn't stop. They were still rival CEOs after all. Aurelian worked from Blackwood Manor out of sheer spite, refusing to let Lucien think he'd won anything. Lucien insisted on sharing meeting rooms for efficiency. Their joint work environment was chaos. They bickered during video calls. They corrected each other mid-sentence. They stole contracts from each other while sitting at the same table. Their boards were confused. Their assistants were terrified. The stock market loved it. Somewhere along the way, the stalking stopped. No more gifts, no more letters, no more footsteps. Aurelian noticed one evening curled on the couch, absently rubbing his stomach. It's quiet, he murmured. Lucien stiffened. Do you miss it? Aurelian shot him a look. Absolutely not. But the fear, the constant edge, was gone. And that scared him more than he liked to admit. At 4 months pregnant, the truth arrived quietly. A routine medical update. A paternity report Aurelian had ordered weeks ago and forgotten in the chaos. He opened the file while Lucien was on a call. He read the name once, twice. His heart stopped. Lucien Blackwood. Aurelian stared at the screen, then laughed, then swore, then stormed down the hall like a force of nature. Lucien barely had time to end the call before Aurelian slammed the report onto the desk. You, Aurelian hissed, face blazing red, are the father of my child. Lucien froze. For exactly 2 seconds. Then he exhaled, slow, reverent, relieved. Yes. Aurelian's voice wobbled with fury. You knew. I suspected, Lucien corrected softly. And I was happy. That stunned Aurelian more than anything else. Lucien confessed everything. How he'd been drugged that night. How he'd tried to leave. How a very drunk, very bold Aurelian had pulled him back laughing, challenging him. How Lucien had fought himself until he couldn't anymore. How I woke up, Lucien said quietly. And you were gone. He'd searched. He'd waited. He'd wanted to take responsibility. But Aurelian hadn't remembered him. And when you told me in the car, Lucien admitted, eyes soft, that you were pregnant. I was happier than I have ever been. Aurelian covered his face. I'm still biting you for this. Lucien smiled, warm, unashamed, utterly devoted. Worth it. Aurelian bit him anyway. Not hard. Lucien didn't complain. Somewhere between chaos and confession, between rivalry and shared space, something had changed. Aurelian noticed it when Lucien fell asleep beside him on the couch, hand resting protectively near his stomach. He noticed it when work felt lighter, when arguments turned playful, when fear no longer followed him. Living with a lovesick psycho should have been a nightmare. Instead, it was starting to feel like home. Chapter 4. Proposal, Bribery, Marriage, Baby. Lucien Blackwood proposed on a perfectly ordinary morning, which was, frankly, suspicious. Aurelian was halfway through yelling at a screen some poor executive had just suggested pastel branding, when Lucien calmly knelt beside his chair. No dramatic music, no crowd, just a velvet box placed gently on the desk. Aurelian Vale, Lucien said evenly, marry me. The office went silent. Mira dropped her tablet. Elliot stopped breathing. Aurelian blinked. No. Lucien nodded once, like he'd expected that. All right? Everyone relaxed. Then Lucien stood up and snapped his fingers. The doors opened. Assistants wheeled in cases. Black, sleek, heavy. Lucien gestured casually. Rare gems, uncut, ethically sourced. Another case opened. 3 luxury properties, 1 beachfront, 1 private island. Another. Unlimited black cards, no spending cap. Another. Smaller but shinier. Original pieces, one of a kind. You once said you liked how they catch the light. Shiny things everywhere. Aurelian stared. This, he said slowly, is emotional manipulation. Lucien met his eyes. And it's working. Aurelian scowled, then sighed, then snatched the ring. Fine, he snapped. But if you ever hold this over my head, I will divorce you and take everything. Lucien smiled, like a man who just won the world. The world exploded 3 hours later. Blackwood Vale. Merger through marriage. Rival CEOs tie the knot. Pregnancy confirmed. Stock markets fluctuated wildly. Media outlets collapsed into hysteria. Analysts screamed. Fans cried. Mira had to unplug Aurelian's phone. Lucien's board resigned themselves to fate. Their married life was loud. Lucien hovered. Aurelian complained. Lucien complied anyway. Lucien attended every appointment, held Aurelian's hand, memorized heartbeat schedules. Aurelian pretended not to enjoy it. Pregnancy suited him, despite his constant grumbling. He glowed in an irritated, radiant way, snapping at anyone who tried to touch him without permission. Lucien was unbearable. If you hover any closer, Aurelian warned one evening, I'm charging rent. Lucien replied instantly, I'll pay. The stalker was caught 2 months before the due date. The arrest was swift, quiet, brutal. The man was exposed as Rowan Hale, Aurelian's ex-boyfriend, hotel magnate, serial cheater, obsessive lover who believed betrayal was forgivable if love was true enough. Lucien personally handed him to the police. Rowan screamed Aurelian's name as he was dragged away. Lucien didn't look back. The danger ended, or so everyone believed. Labor was long, painful, chaotic. Lucien never left Aurelian's side. He whispered encouragement, held him steady, promised everything, protection, devotion, a future where nothing would ever touch him again. When their baby girl finally cried, Lucien wept. Aurelian laughed weakly. You're embarrassing. Lucien kissed his forehead. I don't care. Their child was perfect. Healthy, loud, stubborn already. A menace, clearly. They went home as a family, happy, safe, whole. That night when the mansion slept, Lucien descended alone. Past security, past locked doors, into a room no one else knew existed. The lights flicked on. The walls were lined. Photographs. Aurelian at events at work, laughing, frowning, unaware. Handwritten notes carefully preserved. Replicas of gifts once sent anonymously. Pressed flowers, watch boxes, letters never delivered. Every detail catalogued. Lucien stepped inside, breath steady. In the center sat a single photograph. Aurelian, months ago, looking over his shoulder, afraid. Lucien touched the glass gently. "You're safe now," he whispered. Whether Lucien had protected Aurelian from the stalker or whether the truth was far more complicated, no one would ever know. Not everything seen was meant to be understood. Not every monster announced itself. And Lucien Blackwood loved Aurelian Vale obsessively, completely, and forever.